8:30.
Okay. Just get the recording going. I think I did. Okay, thank you all for joining us, and especially thank you to Richard Rinberg, who again has volunteered to give us yet another visual presentation, this time the art of Shavuot throughout the ages. And we look forward to hearing and learning from you this evening. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you, Alex, and good evening, everybody from, frankly, across the world. Because none of us have been able to travel too much, I thought it would be interesting to go across the world and across time as well, and look at how Shavuot has been presented through the ages. And I've started with Rembrandt, 1659, with the Luchot. And all of the slides I'm going to show you, I've either taken them myself, being the photos, showing my age slides, taken them across the world, or I've seen the items or pulled them down. And I'm going to go back, but I'll start with this comment, Ze keli vanavehu, this is my God and I will glorify him, from Shmot. And from this, we have taken the idea as Jews that everything we do, hidur mitzvah, we should enhance somewhat. So it's not enough to just have a Kiddush cup, but it should be a beautiful Kiddush cup. When we have a siddur in the old ages, in the old times, we wanted to illuminate it. We did it to the best of our ability. And for example, you've got here in the middle, the machzor of worms from the 13th century. And you can see the first illustration of a wedding, a colored illustration. And the question is, what is this wedding about? And if you look, you can see the chatan, they're covered by a talit. You can see the chatan. The kala, you can't see the face. So some people will say this is actually the wedding between Bnei Yisrael and the Shekhinah, or the Torah. And here's the Rav bringing the cup of wine. Others would say, no, this is a chatan and kala. This is just sniut. Torah Tashem Tmima from Tehillim, B'Shivat Nafish. And I think we all need some sort of chizuk in this difficult period. And I've brought this Rothschild Miscellany page, probably the height of beauty of illumination that Jews have ever had from the Renaissance Italy. So this is from across Europe. These are symbols that we understand very, very well. When we walk into a shul, Bet Knesset, we're very comfortable, or we see this. The Luchot, this one from the Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam. This is from northern Italy, in Piedmont. That's actually the ark itself. This is from above the ark. And here we see the Keter Torah, the Luchot, Hashem's name, the Parochet. This is from Yanina in Greece. It's all across. We're all very comfortable with this. But where did they come from, and has it always been like this? So this is also in Moscow, the Choral Synagogue. Again, same sort of imagery wherever you go. Now, going back to in time, the Louvre, 800 BCE, so we're going nearly 3,000 years. Here's the Mesha Stele. King Mesha was the king of Moab. Here's Moab down here. And the Stele would celebrate his works and victories. And it's the first time that you see the word Israel written down. It's the earliest time that we see that written here. Now, if you take this stele and you double it, well, it's very much an image of Luchot, right? So perhaps that's where Luchot, the idea in imagery, came from. Now, on Thursday night, Ohel Ari had a talk by Rav who mentioned Jura Europos. Jura Europos actually caused a revolution in Jewish art. Before, let's say, the 1930s, it was generally agreed by art historians that Jews didn't really go for art too much, that by keeping the commandments and the idea of not having representations, representational art, that was sort of embedded in the DNA of Jews. And then in 1920, the British Army found this place, Jura Europos. Jura, from the English word durable, endure, means very strong. It's a fortress. And this fortress city, which is in today's Syria, is 300 feet above the Euphrates. And it stands here. This is, let's say, after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE. his generals then fight for their own fiefdoms, and Seleucid, the Seleucid Empire, steps up, and Dura Europus, and here's an aerial shot, I obviously didn't take this, of Dura Europus, and you can see the Euphrates here, and there's a 300-foot cliff here. So if you want to, and these deep ravines, so if you want to defend this, and this is towards, let's say, Iran, so the Parthians, the Iranians are going to come from this direction, so here's your wall that you're going to defend. You're not too worried about people coming from the river or from here, this is the side. And obviously the central areas are going to be, should we say, the good areas, and near the defensive wall, the less good areas. So you can see the synagogue that was at Dura Europus is here nearby the wall. And in fact, this was a pretty multicultural society at Dura Europus. So there's a church here, there's a synagogue here, but this is where the synagogue was, and there's the wall. And when they realized that the armies were going to be coming fairly soon, and fairly soon can be months and weeks in those sorts of times, they filled in to build up the wall, because the way armies broke through was to drill through, was to mine underneath the wall. So they started filling in with sand and rubble like this. So this whole area gets filled over. Well, it's a bit like Ohel Ari built its shul, and then within 10 years, it was all filled over with soil to strengthen the wall the other side. And that's it, you don't see the shul anymore. And there it lay until the 1920s, when British troops were in the area after the First World War, and they found some of the rubble, and they were trying to understand what it was, and they realized there's something to dig for here. And Yale, in fact, picks it up, and there are 12 excavations here. And this is the shul area, but when they've taken away what was actually facing these walls, and they go just up the road about 200 kilometers, I think, from where I am, to the National Museum of Damascus, which was established in 1919. And this is, if you go on the website today of Damascus Museum, you'll see they're very proud of this synagogue. They don't quite spell it correctly, Dura Europus, or this is all together, I've just cut and pasted, or Dura Urbus. Obviously Dura fort and European fort, and they say it dates back to the 3rd century BCE. And the museum has a special wing dedicated to this synagogue, which is really a very special place. And here's a picture of the wall of the synagogue. So this would be the Torah niche, the Torah ark, if you want. And you would pray towards this, but look at these pictures. Now, this is from 245 CE, right? 245, very early on, full of pictures. So this was a revolution to the art world, that Jews had this sort of thing. Now, if you were walking in the shul, again, I don't agree with all of the descriptions here, but this is the sort of feeling you get. And of course, you're praying towards the Western Wall because you're in Syria, Jerusalem, right? Think, well, you're to the east, so you're going to pray towards Yerushalayim in the west. And here's the wall again, the niche, and this picture here. There's again academic argument who this is. It may be Moshe reading from a scroll of the law. It's been described in other ways. And here, I like this picture very much. In 1932, before they'd identified everything, the wife of the archaeologist, Susan Hopkins, sat in the niche, and it gives you an idea of scale. But you can see, you don't see luchot at the top here. You see a conch shell, which is an ancient symbol to do with holiness. You see the menorah. You see, obviously, a representation of the Bet HaMikdash. You're seeing probably Avraham and Yitzchak, the Akedah. And again, discussions to what this may be, maybe Yaakov and an Ohel. There can be all sorts of possibilities for it. Now, from Tehillim, ki elef shanim b'einecha ki yom etmol ki yavo vashmora balayla, 1,000 years are nothing in Hashem's sight. We're now going to skip forward from 245, about 700 years. And here we're actually going to one of the earliest surviving Byzantine Bibles. So it's Christian art, but you can see a hand coming down from heaven. Here, the Bnei Yisrael, if you want, at the bottom of the mountain. I'll blow it up a bit. You can see a hand coming down and giving either a codex, a book, or a stone tablet, possibly 2 tablets, I don't think so. And you can see you take off your shoes when you're on holy ground. So obviously, biblical illustration illustrating Moses receiving the law. Now this is, again, skipping forward a few years, the oldest complete Torah scroll that we know about that was found in Bologna. The academic, Professor Parani, who found it, realized it had been miscatalogued. And here actually is some of the text from Lech Lecha, Vayikach Avram, et Sarai Ishto, right? Ve'et Lot ben Achiv, ve'et Kol Rechushav Asher Rachashu. I mean, it's very, very clear and easy to read, beautiful lettering. This is the oldest complete Torah scroll that we have. Going forward in time to 1260, this is Notre Dame that burnt down a while back, or a lot of it burnt down. And here you see Moses with 2 luchot and with a rounded top, that sort of image. And a year ago, Pesach time, I dealt with the Bird's Head Haggadah from 1300. And here you see Moshe, Matan Torah, written here, receiving 2 of these luchot, right? Very similar to the image we've just seen. But down here, it turns into 5. Well, the Chumash, the Chumshei Torah. So now we have 5 books, as it were, being handed down. And then a little bit later than 1300, 1325, and this year, for those who were who saw the talk I gave on the Sarajevo Haggadah, again, from a Catalan, you can see they're dressed in Catalan type outfits from Spain, pre-expulsion Spain. There's Moshe taking the luchot. You can see the shape, the 2 of them. And this is in the same Haggadah showing the Bet Knesset with the doors open, and you can see the beautiful Sifrei Torah and how they're dressed. And if you go to the Rome Museum, the Jewish Museum in Rome, you'll see similar dressings, the Me'il of the Sefer Torah here. And a little later, we'll see some of this. Now, in the early 1400s, a competition is held in Florence to do with this building, the baptistry. And this is in the Piazza del Duomo. Duomo is just cathedral in Italian. As to these doors, a competition to make these doors, they give a pretty defined idea of what they want for the doors, but everybody takes this very seriously and enters the competition. And Ghiberti wins, and he actually produces some doors. They're now in the museum, in the Museum of the Opera del Duomo. And when Michelangelo sees them, he says, these are the gates of paradise. And they really are remarkable. They're considered probably the height of metalwork of the Renaissance era. He was a goldsmith. And this is one panel. And you can see the reason I took this panel is Moshe, top of the mountain, receiving the luchot. Here's the silver trumpets, the chotzrot being played. Obviously, the Nile has to be down here, Moshe and the Nile. Clearly, this is Renaissance sort of design, as it were, but beautifully done. We look at these gates and these panels and we think, very, very nice. They took Ghiberti over 20 years to produce. 21 years of his life went into this, but they are really remarkable. And then going forward a bit, 1461, we have Mantegna, one of the great artists of the time, in this altarpiece, which is in the chapel of the Duke of Mantua. And here you've got Moses, again with horns, the mistranslation. Originally, by the way, the horns of Moses were more to do with cornucopia, the idea of the horn of plenty. It was seen as a positive image, not a negative image, that we see it today as being the horns of the devil. But you can see that the luchot are in a rectangular sort of shape. These are absolutely remarkable. They're up the road in Ramat Gan in a private collection, William Gross's collection. And these are probably the oldest Torah staves in the world, the Atzei Chayim. They're from northern Italy, made around 1470. And you can see the design here, very close, the windows to that of a Gothic church. And here, this is a church screen in Italy, and you can see the sort of designs here, very, very similar. Very beautiful, amazing. They're in a collection, a private collection. This private collection would be good enough for any nation to have. He's a remarkable person, just had his 80th birthday, published a book by many academics, and this picture actually comes from one of those books. Here, 1474, down here it's written, Moses Judaeum, Moses the Jew, by Justus van Gent, obviously not Jewish, but clearly he's taking lessons from a scribe to accurately represent. Often you'll see Hebrew, and we'll see a few representations where the Hebrew looks like Hebrew but isn't quite. But some artists went to great lengths to actually get it right, as this artist seems to have done. And again, interesting, the shape of the luchot here, the lettering, what's on them, who chose exactly what would be on them and what wouldn't be on them. And we'll see there are different approaches to that. This is actually in New York in the Jewish Museum today, but it's the oldest wooden Torah Ark from Urbino in Italy. It's from the late 1400s. And again, it looks like a very beautiful cabinet, as it were. There's no luchot on top, no design outside that would tell us immediately that it's a Torah Ark. Of course, if you open it up and you then see the Sefer Torah beautifully dressed with these luchot on the interior of the door, you then assume that this is late 1400s. The trouble is this was actually refurbished in 1624. So what you're seeing here is really a later edition, but the Torah Ark as the wooden part of it and the outside and the look is absolutely authentic. Now, if you go to the Sistine Chapel, to the Vatican, you'll see Rosselli's 1483 design, very busy design, Moshe up in heaven, and here he is with the luchot, and you've got the golden calf. So they're telling really the whole story in picture form. Not everyone could read, and that was one of the ways of conveying the information and controlling the information, because the Vatican had the approach that you don't read the Bible. That was for only the priests and the people who are the professional church fathers, but not for the average person in the street. Very, very different, shall we say, to the Jewish approach down the ages. And this is Albrecht Dürer, one of the outstanding artists of all time, 1511. And there's an altarpiece. This is actually on the back of the altarpiece. And here we've got these luchot, again, a similar sorts of design. And right at the bottom on the right, you've got this little picture of him that he made it, that this is Dürer signing his own, in 1511, signing his own piece of work. Here's David HaMelech, King David, playing the harp. And now we've got Michelangelo, again, in the Vatican, in St. Peter's. Michelangelo's Moses. Interestingly, here's a portrait of Michelangelo, and the more time I've spent looking at his portrait and Moses, it seems to me that I haven't read this anywhere, but it seems just to me clear that he looked in the mirror to model his Moses, that it's modeled on himself. I just look at it and they really look like peas in a pod to me. And Michelangelo is holding the luchot in his right hand, and he's looking to the left, and you can see the horns here. And there are different views about this, what this actually represents. Looking to the left, maybe he's seen the golden calf and he's about to smash the luchot. But what's interesting is Vasari, who lived at a similar time to Michelangelo, who wrote on the lives of the artists of the Renaissance, he writes that the Jews of Rome used to actually go on their Shabbos afternoon walk to the Vatican, to St. Peter's, specifically to see this statue of Moses. They really felt it represented Moses, the strength of this statue, the beauty of this statue, the lifelike way. I mean, you look at the muscles and the skin and everything about it. I mean, Michelangelo was remarkable, and the Jewish community didn't seem to have a problem. They went in troops into going to visit to look at it on a Shabbat afternoon. So this is actually in the Jewish Museum in Rome from 1523, from the Catalan synagogue. It's the oldest surviving Roman Aron HaKodesh. It was in the ghetto before the ghetto was sealed, the ghetto area. The ghetto was set up 1516. And you can see the luchot at the top. They haven't got the rounded shape, but the square shape. And you can see the sort of wording that's put on it. So if you go to Pisa, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and you go into the cathedral, you'll see Beccafummi's work, his Moses with the tablets, and he's just about to smash them, that we can see. You can see the representations often have, here's the golden calf, a lot in common. You can see why he's smashing here. And I like this very much. This is Tintoretto in Venice, Moses receiving the tablets of the law. There's a lot going on here. He actually has done different versions of this Tintoretto, but you've got down below, and here's the golden calf and the people, and you've got up in heaven, and heaven's very busy. But what I like particularly is that Tintoretto has taken this sort of spinning sun, this spinning energy, and out of the energy comes this solid stone, one of the luchot. And it's almost Einstein and E equals MC squared. The energy can turn into matter. He seems artistically to have taken that idea. It's remarkable. And here, of course, is one that's the finished one. Here's the second one. Here's the first one that came out that's going to be handed down. So Dominikos Theotokopoulos El Greco, the Greek, on Mount Sinai. This is from a triptych. I've cut off the other parts of it, and you can see Mount Sinai. Here's Santa Caterina, for those, as I did many years ago now in the 70s, who went down to Sinai and saw Santa Caterina at the bottom of Mount Sinai. And here at the top, just remarkable. You can see the energy coming out of heaven, the flashes of lightning, the luchot. You can see Moshe, you can see some angels here. It's just a remarkable piece of work. It's almost abstractly beautiful in what's going on. And you've got pilgrims coming here to visit. This painting is actually owned by a bank. I had difficulty getting this image. There's another one by Reni, Guido Reni, 1610, where he's actually looking at the luchot. And you can see here, you look at the Hebrew, it's close but no cigar. It's not quite right. He hasn't gone to the lengths that others did to get this right, but we clearly get the idea of what's going on. And this is in the Netherlands, where the Christians took up this idea of having luchot and showing the law on the wall. And in many churches, Marian churches, you'll see this sort of design, very, very wordy and such like. We don't know who did this, 1624. And here's Moses with the 10 Commandments, 1648. But you can see, Hero Israel, Ekut Israel. But if you look at it, firstly, the counting starts on the left, not the right. So certainly Christian. And it goes 1, 2, 3, not 4, 5. And then, so 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's a 3 and 7 split, not quite the split that we have. You have to be careful about this, because if you're Jewish and you take a designer, a Christian designer, and you say, for example, make me a Torah shield, you can end up with this 1, 2, 3, 4. And by the time it's finished, it's probably a bit late, and maybe they didn't even realize to begin with to put this right. Just interesting. So clearly this is a Catholic silversmith making a Torah shield, which properly is called a tas. It shouldn't be called a breastplate, although that's in popular usage in English. But clearly made by a Christian, not a Jew. And this used to be a Rembrandt, authentic Rembrandt. Now it's been downgraded to perhaps studio of Rembrandt, where the students would do it and Rembrandt would walk around and perhaps correct things. And you can see the luchot here. And again, it's not quite proportional in the words either side of what's going on. Now, if we go back to Amsterdam, to the Portuguese synagogue known as the Esnoga in 1675 when it's built. This is the Portuguese community after the Jews are kicked out of Spain and Portugal. They end up in Amsterdam, which is very good for people of different religions. You're allowed to follow your religion. And this is in the Esnoga itself. And you can see the Aron HaKodesh. And you can see on top of the Aron, you've got these rectangular tablets of the law, the luchot. But the wording is not as we would generally have it today. It's much closer to Rembrandt. Now, Rembrandt came in 1659, so they would have seen this. So 1675, so as they were planning the shul and decorating it, perhaps his ideas found some sort of idea here, although the wording is different, and they didn't go for the same shape. Now, Aaron de Chavis in 1675, he's actually the first Jewish artist who's working in England after the Jews were allowed back in 1655, because Jews were kicked out in 1290. So there's this 365-year period where there are no Jews. And here you see in Hebrew and in Spanish. The tablets of the law, obviously with Moses here, with Aaron. And I like very much, he's taken the beams of light and he's added them in here. Not the horns. We know the translation when the Vulgate Bible was done for Keren, Karne Or, but he's got beams of light coming off his face, which is very much in keeping with the Torah text. These are beautiful. The parochet from Venice in Italy, and you can see again the luchot here. One of the customs was that ladies used to get together to sew the luchot, and of course, as you were doing a mitzvah, you didn't want it to be a mitzvah sheba ba'avera. You didn't want it to be a good deed that came about as part of a bad deed, so you didn't want any gossip going on, any rechilas, as they say, no gossip. So the Rav would give a shiur, and the ladies would listen, but they'd use the time as well as listening to sew, and they produce these holy items. And here again, you see the anan, right? The clouds here, and you can see these hands coming out and giving the luchot down. And here's a representation, very much a Renaissance representation of the perfect city of Jerusalem. Now, there are certain minhagim that are different between Sfardim and Ashkenazim. So we have akdamot, right? Akdamot milin, that we say before the laning takes place on Shavuot, 90 verses that are an introduction, akdamot milin, introductory verses to what? To the giving of the 10 Commandments, to the 10 Commandments. But the Sfardim have a different minhag, and they read out before laning on Shavuot a ktuvah. And this is an example of one. And it's the ktuvah that marries Bnei Yisrael to the Torah. And here it is. And here are the luchot. And just look at the top line. Na'aseh v'nishma, right? So that's the oral law. Obviously the Mishnah, we have the Torah Shebiktav, the written law and the oral law, which is shown on the ktuvah. And sosasis badoshem tagel nafshi belokai from Yeshayahu. I'll greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God. And I'll just go back, look down the bottom, because the Eidim have to sign. So who are the Eidim? Well, Shamayim va'aretz, right, are the Eidim. And in fact, in some, you'll see that the sun and the moon are the Eidim, but here's Shamayim va'aretz. And of course, you have to have the date of when the wedding took place. Well, it was the 6th of Sivan, 2448. Which was the day on which the Torah was given from our Masoret. And in fact, if you take this year and you deduct the 2448, it's a shame it's not next year, because then it will be 3333. So now we know it's one less than that. It's 3,332 years when we're standing on Shavuot that we look back to when the Torah was given. Now there's a Sefer Minhagim, which is a little earlier than this, but I have a copy that's got these absolutely beautiful woodcuts, and I've blown one up here, and I've taken the Sefer Minhagim from Amsterdam, 1723, created by Isaac de Cordova, so you can see originally his family's from Spain or from Portugal, but printed in Amsterdam, and it's showing Shavuot, and there's Moshe taking the luchot. They've sectioned off the mountain from everybody else, so you can't go up, right? It's in keeping. But of course, there are other things that go on with minhagim before we even get here. So for example, Lag BaOmer, a haircut. And here you can see what it looked like going to the barber in the 1700s or 16th century. And you can see Lag BaOmer or Shvat Shabbat. The Shvat Shabbat, this is to do with the Crusades and the number of people who died on the Shabbat before Shavuot, right? Der Shabbat for Shavuot. Rosh Chodesh Sivan, and it gives you all in its Weiberteich. It's a Yiddish, an easily read Yiddish, simple Yiddish, still quite difficult for us to work through. And if you read today's Jerusalem Post, there was a lovely article about the Amsterdam community and how it's trying to get back on its feet. And in the museum there, or adjacent to the museum, is the Etz Chaim library, which actually was founded in 1616. It's the oldest still functioning Jewish library in the world. If you ever get a chance to visit it and you love Jewish books, it's absolutely wonderful. It's by the esnoga, the synagogue. And here's an Omer counter. And here you can say HSD for Homer Samanath Dias, right? The Omer with an H, weeks and days. And you turn at the top. And here you've got, so for example, the 36th day of the Omer here is 5 weeks, 5 sevens are 35, add 1 day, 36. And you've got the brachot, which you turn as well from each one. Very, very beautiful objects. Ze keli va'anavehu. And here's another Omer counter, and this is a hint for anyone who hasn't counted today. This is a hint for where we are at the moment, and you can see how far we've got to go. And I've blown up just the end of it, and you can see V'asit Chag HaShavuot L'Hashem Elokecha, and here are the Aseret Dibrot, Midbar Sinai. Again, another different one with some luchot at the top. And this, actually, the picture similar to this was in today's paper. Now, these Rimonim from Emden in Germany, and again, associated to the Torah. Why Rimonim? Originally, the shape of the bells that were put on top of a Sefer Torah were pomegranate shaped. So from that, they became called Rimonim, no matter the shape. And the idea of them being there is that the bells should warn people that there is a Sefer Torah moving, and therefore you should stand up. You should pay honor to the Sefer Torah. So that's why originally it was put there. And these are absolutely beautiful from 1806. And like many objects, if you dig around, you can find that there's a tower in Emden that was built in 1572. And you can see that the silversmith took a very beautiful building. And from that, you get the design from these Rimonim. And I've shown this before with Chanukiyot. There are people who literally spend their time looking at architectural detail and Judaica and finding where the designs come from. And you sometimes get these remarkable pieces of information coming together. Here's Solomon Hart, RA meaning Royal Academy, which meant he exhibited in the Royal Academy in London. In fact, he's the first Jewish artist who's given the RA, who's allowed to exhibit in the Royal Academy. And even though this is Simchat Torah and not Shavuot, it is such a colorful, beautiful picture showing, this is Leghorn, Livorno in Italy, showing an Italian synagogue parading this Sifrei Torah around and how people looked. It's just so wonderful. I wanted to bring it in. It's just joyful to see. And this is Gustav Doré in the 19th century, 1866. And here he's about Moshe. Well, here he's received the Torah, and you can see the beams, right? The Karnei Or, right? It's his way of dealing with the horns, as it were, the beams of light. And here Moshe is about to smash the Luchot because he's seen what's gone on with the golden calf. Doré did some remarkable illustrations to the Bible, just remarkable work. And here's Simeon Solomon, a young rabbi holding the Torah. You can see the young lady up here in the ladies' gallery. Again, very, very beautiful image of a Sefer Torah. You can see the beauty of the Me'il, the covers of the Rimonim on top. And also you get the feeling of the good feeling that Simeon had to Judaism from such a painting as this. And you can see this is from the Museo Ebraico in Rome. And you can see the beauty of the Sefer Torah, the Italianate furnishings they put on the Sefer Torah. Now this is interesting. This is a Torah crown. So it's called a Shmira, and I'll explain that, from the Ukraine in 1850, going on perhaps to all the way up to 1900. But it says here, you can read it, Zeh HaKetet Torah. Okay, so this is the crown of the Torah. Naaseh Mishekel HaKodesh. It's made from the Shekel HaKodesh. So you would think, well, the Shekel HaKodesh, we read about that in the Torah and the Chumash, but how could anybody get the silver from the temple times from the Shekel HaKodesh? So you have to understand this is actually part of Shmira, which is a Hasidic idea. And the idea is behind the Shmira is that you visit the Rebbe. You're a Talmud, you're a Chassid of the Rebbe. You go and visit him. And when you visit the Rebbe, you're going to give him a donation of money. You may only be able to see the Rebbe once a year. There's actually a limit to how many times the ordinary chassid can go and see his Rebbe. It's not so easy. So you give the Rebbe a donation. It's called in Hasidic terms the Pidyan HaNefesh, redemption of the soul. You'd also give him a kvittel. The kvittel is sort of a note, a supplication note. Generally, you're asking for help with something, with success for something, protection from something. Maybe you want to have a child. Maybe you want success with your parnasah, with your business, whatever. And you'll also, so you've given the Pidyan HaNefesh, you've given the donation, you've given the kvittel, the supplication note. You'll also give the Rebbe a silver coin. And he's going to hold that coin, which is very important. The Rebbe has now held the coin and perhaps even given it a blessing, and he'll then give you the coin back. This is now your talisman, if you want. It's kamaya. It's going to bring you luck. You're going to treasure it. It's going to bring you banei chaye mazone in their children, health, and sustenance. And in fact, the Rebbe may even give you money off his own bat. So, for example, the Lubavitcher Rebbe would give out, as is well known, the dollars and the $2 notes and the $5 and the $20. And you see them going at auction for $770, a $1 note, for obvious reason. That was his address. So people would store up these really important coins, the Shmirah coins, and in some cases, they would then fashion them into a Keter Torah or a Kiddush cup, and you would use it. There's also a Hasidic idea, and it's a very beautiful idea, that when you use a Kiddush cup, you make a bracha over it. So the first time you use it, it's had one bracha made. So it has a certain amount of holiness. Now, the next time you use it, you're going to make another bracha. It's had two brachot. So it's as it were, it's gone up in holiness. The more time you use it, the holier it becomes. And of course, if you've got a Kiddush cup that's gone down the generations, that have been used by your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, if you were lucky enough to keep such an object, or in a communal terms, came down the years, and you can trace it back to a certain Rebbe. These become very, very holy items in Hasidic terms. And this is how the Shmirah idea works. And you can see a fork and spoon made of Shmirah. And then you'll hear Hasidic stories that somebody was sick and they gave them some chicken soup and they used the Shmirah spoon to drink the soup and they recovered. And you get the miracle worker type stories that come from it as well. So here's a painting by Moritz Oppenheim, Professor Oppenheim, who's accredited today as the first Jewish painter, should we say. And he makes a whole set of paintings of different Jewish customs. And I've obviously taken the one for Shavuot, again, showing in detail what it looks like. So this is for consumption, as it were, not only by the Jewish community, but by the non-Jewish community. And these images end up on postcards and on labels of commercial products here or there, tomato or margarine, so that people could see what was going on. And here you can see the Sefer Torah with the Keter and the Tas, and you've got the Luchot up here. It's Shavuot. They've decorated the shul. There's a menorah here. You've got Ashkenazi, you've got a tricorn hat, Ashkenazi Jewry, but you've also got somebody who's obviously been traveling. Here's an Oriental type Jew who's in the shul, a visitor, most probably. And here's the father or the grandfather holding back the son from going to kiss the Torah. So very, very, today perhaps seen as a little bit kitsch, but very, very interesting in the history of Jewish art. And again, here's a postcard, a different postcard, but again of Shavuot. There are not so many Jewish images of Shavuot. If you talk about Pesach, if you talk about Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, could be here all evening looking at images. But actually, if you want Jewish images of Shavuot, not so many, because there are not so many things you can pick out as being particular for Shavuot, other than decorating the shul and obviously to do with the Torah and the beauty of the Torah and the Luchot. So this is from Frankfurt am Main in the year 1900. This is a Bezalel carpet I have hanging on the wall from 1912. And this is an interesting carpet because it's very contentious as to the message it gives. And I've obviously chosen it from Bezalel School of Art. Bezalel School of Art, established in 1906. It's the first institution in modern day Israel that exists. Boris Schatz, who started it, gets the budget direct from Herzl, and they use the name Bezalel, obviously from the Midbar, the first Jewish artist, Bezalel Ben Uri, who Moshe instructs. And here's this carpet. And again, you've got subliminally the shape of the Luchot in here. And you've got Har Sinai. And you've got 10 trees, if you count them, obviously for the Aseret Dibrot. But where it becomes a controversial carpet, you've got Eshel Avraham on the right, showing the tree of Abraham and Eshel, Achila Shtia Lina. Abraham used to look after everybody with food, with somewhere with something to drink, and with somewhere to rest. But it's contrasted on the other side of Har Sinai with Erez Herzl, because Herzl came to the Holy Land as was then, pre-mandate Palestine, and he plants an Erez here, which actually in a riot is cut down by the Arabs when they're rioting. It's made into a bench at one point. And this carpet basically is sending the message from the Bezalel School of Art that yes, we have Har Sinai, we have the Torah in the middle, and years ago we had Abraham, but today, equal and opposite if you want, on the other side, today we have Herzl. Because obviously this is pre-state, 1912, we've got another 36 years before the state is going to be founded. So Lilien, E.M. Lilien, tremendous, tremendous artist, who's also one of the founders of the Bezalel School of Art, in 1908 is going to illustrate this Bible, the Bücher der Bibel. And here you've got Ruth, black and white drawings. This is his thing mainly. Here you've got Ruth, these beautiful drawings. And here you've got Moshe, and you can see he's about to smash the Luchot. And here you've got Moshe again with the Luchot. And again, just amazing imagery. And of course, you look at the face of Moshe, and he's taken it from Herzl. And he says that. This is, again, there's the hashkafa they're trying to push. But wonderful, wonderful drawings, wonderful imagery. Lilien becomes the artist for the Zionist cause. I gave a talk on Lilien a while back. And another artist from the Bezalel School of Art, Ze'ev Rabban, who lives up until 1970, from 1890. And he has a book, Chagenu, from 1925, Our Festivals. This is actually from the back of the book. And you can see, should we say, the Luchot. And the Bezalel School of Art had no problem if they wanted to describe the Bet HaMikdash of using the image of the Dome of the Rock, because that's on the place where the Bet HaMikdash stood. And here we have, for Lag BaOmer, in that book, this illustration. And there it says Gan Yeladim, difficult for you to read, but with a magnifying glass, you can read it clearly in the original. Lag BaOmer here, the teacher taking all the kids. You can see how beautifully dressed they are in costume of the time, a little bit more like a local, perhaps more British mandate here in the dress. My father had an outfit like this back in these sorts of years, collecting flowers up near Tiveria, going to Har Miron perhaps. You've got the bow and arrow, the fire, right? All the things. And this is Shavuot. And you can see, we'll just go around, Zev Rabban has put Yerushalayim. You can see it's very, very, it's typical Bezalel lettering with the designed alphabets. You've got here Ze'ev Rabban. Here you've got Bezalel. And here you've got Tarpa, the year, right? 400 plus 200 is 600, plus 1240 is 1840. 1920 and a hay 5, 1925. So he's got it all in there. And here you've got the Luchot, which we saw before. You've got the Har Habayit, which we saw before, the walls of Jerusalem. And again, just the way people are dressed, the kids are dressed, and very, very beautiful, very much Harvest Festival. Bezalel School of Art is not a religious institution. And here it's written Shavuot, and you've got Lag BaOmer here as well. You've got various of the other symbols there. Then Arthur Sheik. I'm watching the time now. I've got a few minutes to go. I'll finish within the next 15 minutes. The Sheik Haggadah, which was actually published in 1940, so the Second World War was on. Sheik was in the top 10 list. If Hitler had conquered America, he was one of the first people he wanted to kill, because perhaps one day I'll do a talk on Sheik, because of his drawings that were remarkable for the Second World War, for the war effort. And here you see Moshe, and you can see the first letter of what goes on the Luchot. And this he published in 1948. Again, you've got the Luchot, you've got the modern day soldier, you've got the historical, right? People involved in our history. And you've got the bracha here, Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'gyanu lazman hazeh. So the blessing for arriving at 1948 and seeing the nation of Israel rise. And here's Chagall, again with the image of the Luchot again and again and again. And if you go to the Knesset, in fact, I saw this last night when they showed some pictures from the Knesset, there's a huge, huge tapestry there from 1969 with Moshe receiving the Luchot, David HaMelech, lots going on in you can see the fires going on down here, right? You can see, right, the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf. You have to be careful if you're a politician. Here's Richard Nixon in a black and white photo from 1974. And Golda Meir said in front of everyone, he's the greatest American president that Israel ever had. You have to be very, and you look at his hands, the photographer, Harry Benson, said he just loved Nixon's hands because look at the hands of Moshe, right? So I want to finish up with something remarkable. The oldest Torah Rimonim in the world, right? Rimonim, the silver pieces that go on top of a Sefer Torah with bells, they date to 1400s, and these are actually the only Jewish silver items that have survived the Spanish expulsion of 1492. The only items of silver that we have. And this is a really terrible photo. It's the best I could do, and honestly, I've spent a lot of time looking for better photos in situ. Where are they? They're in this place, in Mallorca in Spain, in the Cathedral of Santa Maria. The building here began in 1229 and finished in 1601. So the people who complained about O'Halloran taking a few years to build, they took 300-400 years to build. And if you go inside, there's a treasury. I mean, it's magnificent, typical Catholic. This is actually the highest Gothic cathedral, I think, in the world. It's certainly higher than Notre Dame. And they've got, these are the Torah Rimonim themselves. And they are absolutely beautiful. You can see the jewels. You can see, difficult to read here, but we'll look in a sec. There's some writing, writing here in Hebrew. See the Rimonim type shapes if you want. But they put on these silver staves to turn them into something else. Now, on or before the expulsion from Spain, so 1492, the Rimonim left and they went to Sicily, right at the foot of Italy. And they end up in the Camerata synagogue. Camerata is basically vaulted room. It was a room, but it was the shul. And then when the Jews are kicked out of Sicily, 1493, the Rimonim get sold, in inverted commas. I'm not sure how they end up, to a Christian merchant who then sends them to the Cathedral of Mallorca as an offering to the Virgin. And then they add the long silver bars at the bottom. And that's now their scepters. They're used in church services in the church. And they've had offers to buy them out. They won't let them go. And if you look at them at the bottom of each side of the Rimonim, you'll see the words Elu HaRimonim Kodesh Lashem Bakneset Camerata. So we know where they're from. And the upper part, there are 6 names, which actually you can find in Tehillim 19, Torat Edut Pikudei Mitzvat Yirat Mishpatei. So obviously the academic who did all this work took him a long time before, we see in 1 minute something that took somebody years to actually come to conclusions about. But it's remarkable that these are the oldest Rimonim in the world, and unfortunately they reside in a cathedral. Now, the shape of the Luchot, it's interesting. Here's a typical art scroll book, the one on Shavuot with Bina, Beni, and Chagai Yonah, right? Chagai the dove. And here you can see the Luchot are rectangular shape. And if you look in the Gemara, the Talmud, you'll see this is the sort of idea if you look at the Perush. Whereas we're used to these rounded tops. Again, maybe it comes from the stele. Maybe there are other explanations, which I won't go into. But look at these 2 letters from the Chief Rabbinate. This one from 2014 from Tzukeitan, where soldiers are exempt from Tanit on Tisha B'Av, because it's during Tzukeitan. And then just most recently, there was a half-day Tanit due to this pandemic that we're all suffering from worldwide. But what's interesting, and why I took these two letters, is the Chief Rabbinate of Israel. But look at the logos. You see they're different. Here are the different logos. This is before Shavuot 2015, and this is after 2015. So the rounded shape is gone. And this is from the Chief Rabbinate. In time for Shavuot 2015, the Chief Rabbinate has updated the design of its official logo. The Ten Commandments will now be depicted in a square rather than the familiar rounded shape. Not a rectangle, but a square. It's interesting, the first person that made a real campaign worldwide was the Lubavitcher Rebbe early on about this. And it's filtered all the way through now, but still in our Batei Knesset, on the whole, when you see this, nobody minds too much. But clearly we're moving towards what the Gemara says, or our understanding of it, and rectangular shapes. And to finish off, I'm back in Berlin in this wonderful gallery with all these amazing Rembrandts, the real thing. But I want to go to a neighbor of Rembrandt who lived in the same road as him in Amsterdam, Menashe ben Israel, because there's a question, where did Rembrandt get the lettering idea from? And it was clear that he interacted with this man. And in fact, this is an etching by Rembrandt. And there is disagreement actually as to whether this is Manasseh ben Israel, but generally across the years, certainly it's been accepted as his picture. There's no argument about this because it actually says Manasseh ben Israel and actually says Salam Italia, it's in a book. So we know who produced it. So we know this is Manasseh ben Israel. And he was remarkable in setting up a printing press in Amsterdam. And this is one of his books. And at this stage, he took as his logo this magic square. And you can read on the magic square that it says, Emet me'eretz titzmach. But you can read it from top to bottom, and you can read it from right to left. Right? It's sort of, if you want a magic, Kabbalistic, Emet me'eretz titzmach, truth sprouts out of the earth. And here's a beautiful picture by Millet of the gleaners, and we think of Ruth. And whenever we come to say Birchat HaMazon, or benching, which comes from Benedictus, actually from the Latin, but Birchat HaMazon, we say this phrase from Tehillim, Hazorim Bedima Berina Yiktsaru, which generally we translate with a comma in the middle, Hazorim Bedima, so someone who plants when they're crying with tears in their eyes, Berina Yiktsaru, with joy they will reap. But I remember the chief rabbi, Jonathan Sachs at the time, saying, no, shift the comma to here. Hazorim Bedima Berina. If you plant, whether you're with tears in your eyes or whether you're laughing, whatever happens, so long as you keep planting, yiktsoru, you will reap. And that's my feeling about the current environment we're living in, that some people have found a merciful relief to many of the trials and tribulations of life, and others have found absolutely horrendous, and others have suffered and paid for it with their lives. But we will come out of it, and Shavuot is coming, and whoops, Torat Hashem Tmima Meshivat Nafesh, the Torah of Hashem is perfect, will restore our soul. I've always liked dry bones. And it just leaves me to say, have a safe Shavuot from the top of the Sistine Chapel. Make sure we all keep clean. And every end is a new beginning. As we come out of this, we've got a new beginning to start up. And I wish you a Chag Shavuot Sameach. And thank you for listening and looking. Thank you, Chag Sameach.
Thank you, Richard, again for another whirlwind tour, and we've definitely reaped the benefit of your knowledge and elucidation. Thank you very much, Richard.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. And Chag Sameach to everybody from England who's tuned in, I can see. I can't get to see you for real, but at least I can see you on the Zoom.
Richard, thank